In 1889, in a farmhouse at Fort Atkinson, in Wisconsin, a man of 35 lay in a bed he was not going to get out of. His joints had closed on him. He could not work the land his family had settled, and the land was failing without him. 14 years later, his product was being advertised in the national magazines, and the farm that had beaten him was carrying his name across the country. I am not going to tell you he was fortunate. I am going to hand you the method by which a man installs a settled expectation of prosperity in a room that is presently standing empty, because that is what he did, and he did it from a bed, with nothing left to him but the one faculty that was never in his legs. You already know about the empty room. You know it does not stay empty, and you know you were not consulted about the tenant now in it. That work is done, and I will not do it twice. What remains is the procedure. It is old, it is plain, it is written down in a form any man can follow, and almost nobody follows it, because it looks too small to matter on the first evening, and there is no evening on which it looks large. Sit forward. This is the whole of it. What this hour assumes, and what it does not. I am going to assume several things about you, and I want them said plainly at the start so that you are not waiting for them later. I assume you know that the gap between you and money is not a gap in your ability. I assume you know that it is a vacancy, that the vacancy has an occupant, that the occupant speaks in your own voice and in the tone of ordinary good sense. I am not going to prove any of that again. A man who has understood the diagnosis and is still waiting for more of it is not waiting for understanding. He is waiting for the feeling that arrives when a thing is explained well, and that feeling is not the same as a changed condition, though it is frequently mistaken for one. So, this hour has one piece of work in it, not the discovery of the tenant, the installation of a different one. And I want you to hear what that means, because it is the reason most attempts fail. You do not empty the room first and furnish it afterwards. There is no interval in which the room stands vacant and clean, waiting for your better intentions to move in. The room is never vacant. It is either occupied by the thing that got in by default, or it is occupied by something you put there on purpose, and the only way to remove the first is to move the second in on top of it. That is not a figure of speech. It is the operating instruction, and every part of what follows is built on it. There are two laws that do the work. Neither of them belongs to me, and neither of them was invented by anyone. One is the law of autosuggestion, which is the means by which a statement held in the conscious mind is finally accepted by the subconscious mind as a fact about you. The other is the law of habit, which is the means by which anything repeated becomes automatic and then becomes invisible. Every method that has ever worked, in any age, under any name, has been these two laws arranged in some order. What I am going to give you is the arrangement that is the most economical of the lot, meaning it asks the least of you per day and yields the most over 90. One more assumption, and it is about your temperament rather than your circumstances. You are not lazy. Men who are lazy do not stay up listening to an old man explain a procedure. Your difficulty is not effort. Your difficulty is that you have been spending your effort in the one place where effort is actively counterproductive, and I will show you that place in a few minutes, because until you see it, you will apply this method the way you have applied every other one, and it will fail for the same reason. The man in the bed at Fort Atkinson. His name was Milo Jones, and his people had come out to Wisconsin from Vermont in 1832, which made him the son of one of the first families to settle that ground. He was 35 when the illness took him. The record calls it rheumatoid arthritis, and I want to be exact about what it did, because the story has grown in the telling, and the growth is not necessary. It did not merely inconvenience him, it ended his ability to farm. A man whose entire trade is in his hands, and his back had his hands and his back taken away from him, and he did not get them returned. Now hold the position steady in your mind for a moment before you look for the lesson, because the position is the whole point. He is in a bed. He has a farm he cannot work and cannot afford to keep. He has a family. He has debts. He has, by every measure that a banker or a neighbor would have used, nothing whatever to trade with, and no prospect of acquiring anything, and a condition that is going to get worse rather than better. What he has left is one room, and it is the room I have been talking about, and it is the only piece of property that illness cannot enter. In 1889, he began making sausage in the family cheese room, from his mother's recipe. That is the whole of the beginning. Not a fortune, not a strategy, not a discovery. A definite thing, of a definite kind, decided upon by a man who could not stand up, and begun immediately with what was already in the house. By 1903, the Little Pig sausage was advertised in the Saturday Evening Post, in the Literary Digest, and in Good Housekeeping, which were the magazines that came into American parlors. The business outlived him, and it is going yet. I want you to notice what he did not have, because your objection is standing in that list. He did not have health. He did not have capital worth the name. He did not have mobility, or a market, or a season of good luck, or an education in trade, or any of the things you have privately decided are the reason your own position has not moved. And he did not have the advantage you are about to award him, which is that his situation was so extreme, it forced him. That is the comfortable reading, and it is false. Extremity does not force a man to do anything except suffer. There were other men in beds in Wisconsin that year. Extremity presents itself as a reason to stop, and it is accepted as one by nearly everybody who meets it, and the acceptance is so reasonable that no one ever calls it a decision. What he did was decide one definite thing, in the one place still under his control, and then feed that decision every day until it became the thing his mind did without being asked. That is the method. Everything after this is the working out of it. Concentration, and why the word has been wasted. The name of the faculty he used is concentration, and I am obliged to spend a few minutes rescuing the word, because it has been worn down to mean something small and unimportant. You think it means not being distracted. You think it means sitting at a desk and keeping your attention on a page for 40 minutes. That is a use of it, and it is the least of its uses, and if that were all it meant, I would not spend an hour of your life on it. Here is the definition, as it is properly set down. Concentration is the act of focusing the mind upon a given desire until ways and means for its realization have been worked out and successfully put into operation. Read that again slowly, because there are 3 things in it, and you almost certainly heard only the first. The first thing is focus, which is what you expected. The second thing is until, which is a word about duration, and it is doing more work than the rest of the sentence combined. The third thing is ways and means worked out and put into operation, which tells you that this faculty is not a mood and does not end in a feeling. It ends in a plan, and the plan gets used. So concentration, in the sense I mean it, is the ability to hold your mind on one subject until you have mastered it. It is the ability to throw off the effects of habits you wish to discard, and the power to build new habits more to your liking. It is the ability to think as you wish to think, to direct your thoughts to a definite end, and to organize what you know into a plan that is sound and workable. That is a very large faculty, and you have been using it all your life. That is the part that stings. You have been concentrating continuously and with great persistence. You have held one subject in your mind daily, for years, with a consistency that would have made you wealthy if it had been aimed anywhere else. The subject you have been holding is the state of your finances as they presently stand, and your estimate of what you are worth, and the reasons a man in your position must be careful. You have worked out ways and means for the realization of that, and you have put them successfully into operation, and they have realized themselves with perfect accuracy. I am not going to teach you to concentrate. You are already an expert. I am going to change the object. There is no mysticism in this, and I want that stated. I am not asking you to believe that a thought reaches out and pulls $1 across a room. I am telling you that a man who holds one definite object in his mind long enough begins to see, in the ordinary traffic of his days, the material bearing on that object, which he formerly walked past without registering, and that he begins to act toward it in 100 small ways he does not trouble to notice, and that these 2 things together are quite sufficient to account for every result anyone has ever attributed to something stranger. The 2 laws every method rides upon. I said there were 2 laws under this. Take them one at a time, because if you understand them, you can build the method yourself, and you will never again be at the mercy of whoever is selling one. The first is autosuggestion. It is the agency by which anything held in the conscious mind, and held with feeling, is finally passed through to the subconscious mind, and accepted there, not as an opinion, but as a fact of the case, and thereafter acted upon without any further reference to you. The important word is accepted. Your subconscious is not persuaded, and it does not weigh evidence. It receives what is presented repeatedly and with emotion, and it makes no distinction whatever between what is constructive and what is destructive. It will take a statement driven by fear exactly as readily as it takes one driven by confidence, and it will go to work on the fear with the same efficiency and the same patience. There is no filter. That is the whole of the good news and the whole of the bad news, and the two are the same sentence. The second law is habit. Habit grows out of doing the same thing in the same way over and over, out of repetition, out of thinking the same thoughts over and over, and once formed, it resembles a block of cement that has hardened in the mold, in that it is very hard to break. The old picture for it is a phonograph record, and it is still the best one. The mind is the needle. Habit is the groove. When a groove has been well cut by repetition, the needle drops into it and follows it, and the needle has no opinion about the tune. Whatever is cut into the wax is what plays, every time, without any decision being made. Now put the two together, and you have the machinery. Autosuggestion cuts the groove. Habit plays it back. The reason your present financial condition is so stable and reasserts itself so promptly whenever it is disturbed is that both laws are already running at full strength on your behalf. Nothing is broken in you. The equipment is in excellent order. It has simply been given the wrong material for a long time, by an operator who did not know he was operating it. And here is the part that ought to encourage you, if anything in this hour does. The two laws do not know the difference between the material they were given by accident and the material you hand them on purpose. They have no loyalty to the present tenant. They are not on his side. They will build a new groove with precisely the same indifference, at precisely the same rate, if you supply the repetition and the feeling. You are not being asked to acquire a power. You are being asked to take hold of a machine that is already running. The ground your mind feeds in. Before I give you the procedure itself, there is one condition surrounding it that will decide how hard the procedure has to work, and it is almost always left out because it is not a technique and cannot be done in 10 minutes. Habit grows out of environment. That is the second law again, stated from the other end. Except on rare occasions when the mind rises above its surroundings, a man draws the material out of which his thought is made from the place he is standing in, and habit then hardens that thought into a permanent fixture and stores it away where it becomes part of his personality, silently forming his prejudices and governing his opinions. Environment is the feeding ground of the mind. That is not a sentiment about pleasant rooms. It is a statement about supply. So consider, without flinching, what you have been feeding on. Consider the talk you sit in most evenings, and what it is about. Consider whether the men and women whose conversation fills your week regard money as a thing that is earned or as a thing that happens to other people. Consider what is said in your house about people who have got on, and in what tone, and how often the tone contains a small pleasure at their difficulties. None of that is aimed at you. That is exactly why it goes in. A suggestion delivered straight at a man meets his defenses. A suggestion carried in the general talk of the room he is sitting in meets nothing at all, because he is not being addressed, and has therefore no reason to be on guard. He is merely present, and being present is sufficient. This is why a man may practice a formula faithfully for 10 minutes at night and undo the whole of it between 6 and 9 in the evening without ever noticing that he has been at work in the opposite direction. Now, I am not going to instruct you to leave your friends, and I have no patience with the sort of teaching that does. Most of what you would be told to abandon is also what makes a life worth having, and a man who has cleared his surroundings of every human being who ever said a discouraging word has not built a fortune, he has built a solitude. What I ask is narrower, and it is entirely practicable. Add, do not subtract. Put into your week one deliberate supply of the other material, 1 hour of reading in the lives of men who did the thing you intend to do, and I mean their working method rather than their triumphs. 1 conversation, sought on purpose, with somebody who is further along and who treats the subject as ordinary work. One evening in a room where money is discussed without either reverence or bitterness. Choose the reading with the same care you would use in choosing food, and for exactly the same reason. And observe your own talk, since your talk is a part of your environment, and it is the part you are always in. A man who spends an hour each night installing a definite expectation, and then spends the following day telling every acquaintance how impossible things are at present, has made 2 entries in the same file, and the second one had an audience and a laugh in it. You need not become solemn. You need only stop volunteering evidence against yourself for the entertainment of other people. Do that much, and the 10 minutes have quiet ground to work in. Neglect it, and the 10 minutes are being asked to outpace 14 hours a day of the opposite, which they will sometimes do, and should not be asked to. Why the room will not be emptied by force. Now I owe you the place where your effort has been going wrong, and it is the most useful thing in this hour, and it is the reason you have tried before and stopped. In the early 1920s, a French apothecary named Émile Coué came to America and filled halls in every city he entered. He had kept a chemist's shop at Troyes for the better part of 30 years, and he had gone afterwards to Nancy to study under the men who were then the leading exponents of hypnosis, and out of that he had built something plainer than hypnosis, and, to his mind, better. He taught people to say one sentence to themselves, twice a day, in a low murmur, 20 times over. Day by day, in every way, I am getting better and better. That was the whole of the public method, and the newspapers made a great deal of sport with it, and millions of people practiced it, and a good many of them reported that something had changed. I do not bring him up for the sentence. The sentence is not the valuable part of what that man understood, and I would not spend your evening on a slogan. I bring him up for the law he stated, which almost nobody who repeated his formula ever grasped, and which will decide whether the procedure I am giving you works or fails. He held that when the will and the imagination are in conflict, the imagination wins, invariably, and not only wins but grows stronger in proportion to the effort of will used against it. Sit with that, because it explains your entire history with this subject. You have tried to force a better condition upon yourself. You have set your teeth and resolved. You have determined to stop being afraid about money, and you have applied your will to it as though the will were the instrument. And the harder you pushed, the more solidly the thing you were pushing against sat in its chair. That is not weakness of character. That is the law working exactly as stated. Every act of will against an image confirms the image, because you cannot strain against a thing without first holding it steadily in mind, and holding it steadily in mind is precisely the operation by which it is fed. The man who is determined not to think about his debts has just thought about his debts, with feeling, and has filed the thought. This is why I told you at the start that there is no interval in which the room stands empty. You cannot evict the tenant. Every attempt to evict him is an hour of your attention paid directly to him, and attention is the only rent he has ever wanted. So the whole procedure that follows is built the other way round. Not one word of it is aimed at the tenant. He is not argued with, not resisted, not even acknowledged. The entire operation consists of building something else, in great detail, with feeling, at fixed hours, until the room is occupied by it, and there is no longer any accommodation for what was there. You do not fight the groove, you cut a deeper one beside it. And I will tell you what that costs you, since I have promised to be plain. It costs you the satisfaction of the struggle. There is a real pleasure in fighting your own poverty, because fighting feels like doing something, and it is available at any hour of the day. What follows will feel like much less than that, and it will be a great deal more. The first labor, to name the sum exactly. The procedure has 4 labors of decision, and then a written instrument, and then a daily practice. The 4 decisions can be made tonight, in about 20 minutes, and most men never make them in a lifetime. The first is this. Fix in your mind the exact amount of money you intend to possess. It is not sufficient to say that you want plenty of money, or that you would like to be comfortable, or that you want enough not to worry. Those are not aims. Those are moods with a financial flavor, and no faculty in you can act on a mood. Be definite as to the amount, a figure, in dollars. One you could write on a card and read aloud without flinching, and I will come back to the flinching, because the flinching is information. You will resist this, and you will resist it with an argument that sounds like humility. You will say that naming a figure is arbitrary, that you cannot know what is realistic, that it seems presumptuous, that surely what matters is the direction rather than the number. Every one of those objections is the present tenant speaking, and he is speaking well, as he always does. He is not opposing the figure because the figure is unreasonable. He is opposing it because a definite figure is the one thing he cannot survive alongside. A vague wish can live in the same room with him indefinitely and never disturb his furniture. There is a reason for the definiteness that goes beyond resolve. Your mind cannot work out ways and means toward a destination that has not been specified. Give it a figure, and it begins, quietly and without your supervision, to sort the material of your days against that figure, and things you have walked past for years begin to present themselves as relevant. Now, about the flinching. When you settle on the sum, some number will produce a small physical objection in you, a tightening, a sense of the ridiculous. That reaction is not a verdict on the sum. It is a reading taken off the tenant, and it tells you exactly where the ceiling of the present occupant stands. Set the figure above it, not so far above that you cannot hold it at all, because a figure you cannot hold is a figure you will not read for 90 days. Above it by enough that reading it costs you something on the first evening. The second labor, to name what you give in return. The second decision is the one that keeps this whole method honest, and it is the one that gets left out whenever this material is repeated by men who have not used it. Determine exactly what you intend to give in return for the money you have named. There is no such reality as something for nothing. I state that flatly because a great deal of nonsense has been built on the opposite assumption, and the nonsense always collapses in the same way, and the men who bought it conclude that the whole philosophy was false, when what failed was the half of it they were sold. Money moves toward service in the world of physical things, and it does not move any other way for long. A man who has held a figure in his mind for a year without ever settling what he will render for it has not been running this method. He has been wishing at a wall. So name it, not vaguely. What exactly do you intend to give? It may be a skill you already possess, rendered to more people, or rendered better. It may be a skill you do not yet possess, and will acquire on purpose, at a stated cost in evenings. It may be a thing you make. It may be your particular knowledge of an ordinary trade that you have stopped valuing because it is ordinary to you and has therefore become invisible. The man in the bed at Fort Atkinson answered this question with his mother's sausage recipe and a cheese room. That is not a modest answer. That is a precise one. He had determined what he would render, and the thing he would render was already inside the house, and so he could begin on the day he decided, rather than in some better season. Ask yourself what is already inside your house. And notice, please, what this second labor does to the first one. It takes the figure out of the realm of appetite and puts it into the realm of exchange, and the moment it is in exchange, the mind has something to work with. A man who wants $100,000 has a wish. A man who intends to render a stated service, of a stated quality, to a stated number of people, has an arithmetic problem, and arithmetic problems get solved. The third labor, to fix the day. Establish a definite date on which you intend to be in possession of the money you have named. This is the shortest of the four decisions, and the one most often skipped, and it is skipped for an interesting reason. A date can be missed, and a wish cannot. So long as no day is named, nothing has failed, and nothing can ever fail, and a man may carry an ambition comfortably for 30 years without once suffering the indignity of being behind. That comfort is the price of the whole method, and you will have to pay it tonight. Name the day, not a season, not a vague next year, a date. 2 cautions on choosing it, both practical. Do not set it so near that you will have to be dishonest with yourself by the second month. A date you privately know to be impossible is not a date, it is a piece of theater, and the subconscious mind is unimpressed by theater because it has access to what you actually believe. And do not set it so far off that nothing is required of you this year. Distance is the favorite hiding place of a man who wants the picture without the plan. If the day is far enough away, no evening ever matters, and every evening being unimportant is exactly the condition you are trying to leave. There is a further thing the date does, and it is not obvious. A named day converts your ambition from a hope into a schedule, and a schedule can be divided. Once there is a date, there is a quantity per year, and per month, and per week, and the moment you can see the weekly quantity you have stopped dealing with a mystery and started dealing with a job. Men will tell you that setting a date on a fortune is fanciful. Note who tells you. The objection is never made by anyone who has done it. The fourth labor, a plan begun before it is ready. Create a definite plan for carrying out your desire, and begin at once, whether you are ready or not, to put that plan into action. I want both halves of that herd, because the second half is the one that offends people, and it is the one that does the work. The plan first. It need not be a good plan. It needs to be a definite one, written, capable of being started this week, and capable of being replaced without shame when it proves inadequate, which it very probably will. I have no interest in your plan being correct. I have a great deal of interest in your having one, because a man with a poor plan is in motion and can be corrected, and a man with no plan is not in a position to be corrected at all. There is nothing to adjust. He is waiting for a plan good enough to justify beginning, and no such plan has ever arrived for anyone, in any generation, in any trade. Now the second half. Begin at once, whether you are ready or not. You are not going to be ready. Readiness is a feeling that arrives after the beginning, never before it, and men who wait for it in advance are waiting for the effect to precede the cause. Understand what beginning does inside this method. It is not chiefly about the ground you cover in the first week, which will be very little. It is that the act of beginning is itself a suggestion, and a far stronger one than any sentence you can say to yourself, because it is an act, and the subconscious mind weighs acts heavily. The evening you take one physical step toward the thing, however small, you have told the deep part of yourself something no words could have told it. You have told it that this is now a real matter, and not a subject for entertainment, and you have told it in the only language in which it is fluent. So the four decisions are made: the sum, the service, the day, the plan, and begun. That is one evening's work, and it puts you ahead of nearly every man who has ever admired this philosophy without ever once submitting to it. Setting it down in writing, and why the hand matters. Now the instrument itself. Write out a clear and brief statement of the amount of money you intend to acquire. Name the time limit for its acquisition. State what you intend to give in return for it, and set down plainly the plan through which you intend to accumulate it. 4 sentences, or 5. It is not a long paper, and it is not meant to be a fine one. Its virtue is entirely in its definiteness. The reason it must be in writing, and in your own hand, is not sentiment. A thing kept in your head is not fixed. It drifts. It adjusts itself downward when the week goes badly, and it adjusts itself upward on a good afternoon, and because you cannot see it, you never catch it moving. A figure held only in the mind is being quietly renegotiated with you every day by a party who has a strong interest in the outcome, and you are not present at the negotiations. Committed to paper, it stops moving. It is now outside you, in a fixed form, and it can be read tomorrow in the same words it had yesterday. Any drift is now visible as drift, because the paper does not drift with you. There is a second reason, and it is mechanical. The hand writing a thing is slower than the mind thinking it, and slowness is an advantage here. In the time it takes you to write out the sum, and the day, and the service, you cannot avoid meeting each of them properly. You have to pass through the words. A thought can be had in half a second, and evaded in the other half. A sentence written out by hand cannot be got past so cheaply. Write it once, properly, on good paper. Do not carry it about. Keep it where you will use it, which is beside the place where you sleep, and I shall tell you why that place in a moment. The 2 hinges of the day. Read your written statement aloud, twice daily, once just before retiring at night, and once immediately after arising in the morning. Those 2 hours are not chosen for convenience. They are chosen because they are the only 2 hours of the day at which the door is reliably open. Consider what your mind is doing at any ordinary hour. It is occupied, defended, busy with the traffic of the day, and everything presented to it is examined and argued with before it is allowed through. Say a large thing to yourself at 2 in the afternoon, and some part of you immediately produces the evidence against it. The statement is heard as a claim, and claims get tested. But in the minutes before sleep, that examining faculty is putting down its tools. It is slack. It has stopped defending. Whatever is in the mind at that moment goes down into the deep part of you without being challenged, and it works on it all night, quietly, for hours, without your supervision and without your consent. That is happening already. It has happened every night of your life. The question has never been whether your last waking thought would be filed and worked upon. It has only ever been what that thought was going to be. For most men, it is the day's worst moment, replayed, with feeling. You are simply going to take possession of that hour. The morning has the same property from the other side. In the first minutes after waking, before the day has been let in, you are still soft, and what you put in then sets a tone the rest of the hours have to argue against, rather than the other way about. So it is those two, and it is allowed. Aloud matters more than you would expect. A thing said silently is a thought. A thing said aloud is an event with a sound in the room, and you are its audience as well as its speaker. Your own ear hears your own voice, making a definite statement in the first person, and that arrangement carries a weight no interior murmur has ever carried. Do it in a low voice if the house is asleep. Do not skip it because the voice must be low. 10 minutes, and what is done inside them. Now, the reading takes half a minute. The reading alone is not the practice, and this is where nearly everybody who tries this material stops short of the thing that works. Give it 10 minutes, 10 at night and 10 in the morning, and here is what is done inside them. You read the statement, then you look ahead deliberately, 1 year, 3 years, 5, even 10, and you see yourself in possession, not hoping for it, in possession of it, as a settled matter, the way you presently see yourself in possession of your own name. See the sum in your hands, as an amount that is simply there and is not remarkable to you. See the work you named in the second labor being done, and being done well, and being wanted by people. See the house you have bought with the proceeds of it, and stand in a particular room of that house. See a reserve set by that means nothing later in your life will be an emergency. See yourself as a man whose position is not in question, who is not afraid of the loss of it, and who is consulted. Paint the picture clearly, with the detail you would use for a memory, rather than the vagueness you would use for a hope, and hold it there. And as you read and as you see, feel yourself already in possession of it. That instruction is the pivot of the entire method, and it is the one most often left out. So I shall say it as plainly as it can be said. A statement repeated without feeling is a noise. It is filed as a noise, which is to say, it is not filed at all. That is the true reason the Frenchman's little sentence worked for some, and did nothing for others. Those who murmured it as a duty, 20 times, waiting to be improved, got nothing, and concluded that the method was superstition. Those who said it and meant it, and let it be accompanied by the actual feeling of a man getting better, were doing something else entirely under cover of the same words. The feeling is the carrier. The words are only the cargo. You will object that you cannot feel yourself in possession of money you do not have, and that trying to do so is a species of lying to yourself. It is not lying, and here is the distinction, and it is worth the minute it takes. You are not asserting a present fact about your bank account. You are rehearsing a future condition until your own reaction to it becomes ordinary. That is not deception. That is exactly what a man does before any large undertaking he has decided upon, and no one calls it dishonest when a soldier or a surgeon does it. If the feeling will not come at first, do not force it, because you now know what force does. Stay with the picture and keep it small and specific. Feeling attaches itself to detail, never to abstraction. Nobody was ever moved by a sum. Men are moved by a particular room, a particular face, and a particular morning on which a particular thing is no longer necessary. The pledge, signed with your own name. There is one more paper, and it is short, and I would not include it if I had not seen what its absence costs. Beneath your statement, write a pledge, in these terms or in terms as near to them as your own trade allows. I am going to become a man of definite means, because this will enable me to render service that is needed, and because it will yield me a return that provides the material things of life. I will concentrate my mind upon this desire for 10 minutes daily, just before retiring at night, and just after arising in the morning, for the purpose of determining how I shall proceed to transform it into reality. I know that I can do this, and therefore I will permit nothing to interfere with my doing it. Then sign it. Your own name, in your own hand, at the bottom. I am aware of how that sounds. A grown man signing a private paper in an empty room, with no one to enforce it and no penalty for tearing it up in a fortnight. It looks like a child's ceremony. Sign it anyway, and notice what happens in you as the pen moves, because that reaction is the reason it is there. A signature is the one act by which a man has always bound himself to a thing. You have signed for a house, for a debt, for a marriage. The gesture carries every one of those associations, and your subconscious mind does not distinguish between a document that a court would enforce and a document that only you will ever see. It registers the form. The form says, "This is now undertaken." And there is a plainer effect, which is that it removes the escape. An intention held loosely can be abandoned without any moment of abandonment ever occurring. It simply becomes untrue at some point nobody can name. A signed pledge cannot be dropped so quietly. It has to be actively broken, and you have to be present when it happens, and most men, faced with that, will do the 10 minutes instead. Keep the paper with the statement. Read the pledge on the first evening, and again on any evening you find yourself arguing about whether to keep going. The formula a man repeats to himself once a day. There is one further instrument, older than the rest of this and stronger, and it is the one I would keep if I could keep only one. It is a formula of 5 parts, and it is repeated aloud once a day, and it is signed and committed to memory like the pledge. The first part is a statement of capacity, and it ends in a demand. I know that I have the ability to achieve the object of my definite purpose in life. Therefore, I demand of myself persistent and continuous action toward its attainment, and I here and now promise to render such action. Note that the demand is made upon yourself, and note that nothing is asked of anybody else in the whole of it. The second part concerns the 30 minutes. I realize that the dominating thoughts of my mind will eventually reproduce themselves in outward physical action and gradually transform themselves into physical reality. Therefore, I will concentrate my thoughts for 30 minutes daily upon the task of thinking of the person I intend to become, thereby creating in my mind a clear mental picture of that person. The third part is about self-reliance, and it names its own instrument. I know, through the principle of autosuggestion, that any desire I persistently hold in my mind will eventually seek expression through some practical means of attaining the object behind it. Therefore, I will devote 10 minutes daily to demanding of myself the development of self-confidence. The fourth part fixes the aim and refuses the exit. I have clearly written out a statement of my definite chief aim in life, and I will never stop trying until I shall have developed sufficient self-confidence for its attainment. And the fifth part is the one that keeps the whole thing from becoming a poison, and it is the longest, and it is the reason I trust this formula and distrust most others. I fully realize that no wealth or position can long endure unless built upon truth and justice. Therefore, I will engage in no transaction which does not benefit all whom it affects. I will succeed by attracting to myself the forces I wish to use, and the cooperation of other people. I will induce others to serve me because of my willingness to serve others. I will eliminate hatred, envy, jealousy, selfishness, and cynicism by developing love for all humanity, because a negative attitude toward others can never bring me success. I will cause others to believe in me, because I will believe in them and in myself. Sign that, commit it to memory, and repeat it aloud once a day with full faith that it will gradually influence your thoughts and your actions until you are a self-reliant and successful person. I want the fifth part underlined in your mind, because there is a version of everything I have taught you tonight that produces a hard, grasping, friendless man, and the fifth part is what stands between the method and that outcome. A man who installs an expectation of wealth and removes the obligation of justice has not improved himself. He has merely become efficient at something not worth being efficient at. Now you will have noticed that the formula names its own periods, 30 minutes in one clause and 10 in another, and that I have been asking you for 10 at night and 10 in the morning. A careful man will want that reconciled rather than left as an untidiness, so here is how it is done in practice. The 20 minutes I have asked of you are the 20 in which the statement is read and the picture is held, and they are not negotiable, because they sit at the 2 hours when the door is open, and no other hours will substitute for them. The 30 minutes on the person you intend to become are a separate labor, and they may be taken anywhere in the day that you can get them, and they may be taken in pieces, walking, or at a bench, or on a journey, since they require no quiet room and no paper. And the 10 minutes of demanding self-reliance of yourself are not a third appointment at all. Fold them into the morning 10. You are already looking at a man in possession. Require of him, while you have him in view, that he behave like one today. Start with the 20. Add the 30 when the 20 has become automatic, and not before, because a man who begins with an hour a day will keep it for 9 days and abandon the whole thing on the 10th, and I would rather you did 20 minutes for 90 days than 60 minutes for 9. The same instrument, run backwards. I have given you the whole procedure. Before I let you go, I am going to show you the same machinery running the other way, because you will not respect the method until you have seen what it does when it is not supervised. There is a case that used to be told among physicians. A bank officer in a Middle Western city took a large sum of the bank's money without the consent of the directors, and lost it. One afternoon the examiner arrived and began checking the accounts. The man left the bank, took a room at a hotel, and when they found him 3 days later, he was lying in the bed repeating the same words over and over. "This will kill me. I cannot stand the disgrace." And within a short time he was dead, and the doctors of the day called it a mental suicide. Hold that story lightly. It comes down to us as a case reported, and I am not able to hand you a coroner's paper, and a man who tells you he can is telling you more than he knows. But do not throw it away either, because the mechanism in it is not in dispute at all, and you have watched a slower version of it in people you know. A definite statement, repeated, with overwhelming feeling, at the hours when the defenses are down, held without contradiction until the deep part of the man accepted it as a fact of the case and began, with perfect obedience, to work out ways and means for its realization. That is the identical procedure I have spent this hour giving you. Every element is present. The sum, in his case a loss. The date, in his case immediately. The statement, said aloud. The repetition. The feeling, which was terror, and terror is a very efficient carrier. The machinery has no preference. It never had. It will build a fortune or a grave with the same patience and the same indifference, and it has been running in you, without instruction, for as long as you have been alive. Which brings me to the sentence I want you to carry out of this hour, above all the others. You are not being asked to begin doing this. You are being asked to begin choosing what is done. The practice is already in place, at those same 2 hours, in that same first-person voice, and it has been perfectly faithful to whatever it was handed. The only question ever before you was whether the material would be selected by you or supplied by whatever was nearest. What you will do tonight and for 90 days after. So here is the whole of it, laid out flat, with nothing left in my hand. Tonight, before you sleep, make the 4 decisions, the exact sum, what you will render in return for it, the day by which you intend to hold it, and a plan, poor if necessary, that can be begun this week. Write the statement out by hand, on decent paper, in 4 or 5 sentences. Write the pledge beneath it, and sign your name. Then read it aloud, and give it 10 minutes, and inside those 10 minutes, see the thing in your possession, and let yourself feel what a man feels who is not worried about money, and do not fight anything, and do not argue with whatever is already sitting in the room. In the morning, before the day is let in, do it again. Do that for 90 days. I will tell you what to expect, so that you are not surprised into stopping. For the first fortnight it will feel like a small foolishness performed in an empty room, and nothing whatever will have changed, and you will have to go on with it in the absence of any evidence, which is the entire cost of this method, and the only one. Somewhere in the second month, the paper will begin reading differently. The figure that made you flinch will read as an ordinary figure. That is not you becoming accustomed to a sentence. That is the ceiling moving, and it is the first result, and it is worth more than money at that stage. After that you will notice that you have begun seeing things, not visions, openings, in the ordinary traffic of your days, of a kind that were in front of you all last year and did not register, because a mind sorts its material against whatever object it has been given, and you had given it another object. And in the third month you will find you have done things you did not deliberate over, small acts toward the aim, taken almost absently, in the way a man does the things that are simply his to do. That is the tendency changing. That is the whole of what installation means. The procedure asks 20 minutes of your day, and it asks that you keep going during the weeks in which it appears to be doing nothing, and that second thing is what it really costs, and it is why so few men who admire this philosophy ever come into possession of anything by it. The room is not going to stand empty while you decide. It never has. It is occupied tonight, and it will be occupied 90 nights from now, and the only matter still open, the only one that was ever open, is by whom. Go and write the figure.